Mr. Plattenberg and Mr. Sneed get us started off.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hines. I mean, you know, it's pretty exciting. We are here. My name is Fabio, and Mr. Sneed is, you represent Douglas, I guess. So between the two of us, we're the regional superintendents who are presenting to you the community concerns regarding what's been going on with Freedom Hill in Vienna. And with all sincerity, though, it is something that does relate to facilities and transportation services because we do accommodate and facilitate boundary processes. This issue has been going on actually for quite some time. I think it was back in 2013. There was a discussion that was being held about some of the students, and it really is about going ahead and aligning them within their pyramid, back in the day, within the cluster, within the appropriate pyramid structure for those students. And really it came down to Marshall High School and Madison High School. So what we did was we had heard a lot and couldn't quite figure out there was some consternation, some concerns. So this past year, and I think it was in June, we had two meetings that were held, and one at Freedom Hill and one at Vienna. And we actually sat down with the community members really in just more of our general form of presenting the information and the topic, and then getting feedback about the different concepts that we've prepared. And I think we had four different solutions or recommended solutions. But a lot of times we basically say, well, this is the information that we've come up with. We want to begin this dialogue and have this conversation and get feedback from the community. All that feedback has been posted on our website under the CIP side of things. And I'm going to let Mr. Sneed pretty much go through what the ultimate recommendation was, which was actually, they called it the fourth recommendation on this, about when to begin the migration or the reboundary process. It is an administrative boundary process. It is something where, you know, in accordance with the school board policy as amended that accommodates those, wherein the certain percentages of people that are affected, and Mr. Sneed will give you the actual details on this, we really found out that, you know, the concerns that were out there, a lot of the discussion was about, well, is this going to be a tipping point? Is it going to affect either free and reduced? Is it going to affect the ethnicity and the diversity that we have? Or is this going to be really a mass exodus? And the answers were no, no, no. And the other no was that, in fact, a lot of the students had been part of pupil placement out, a part of a number of different initiatives. And I don't want to steal your thunder. I didn't give any details, but Kevin, if you wouldn't mind just articulating that a little bit further.
Sure. As Jeff indicated, what the study or the catchment area is in Vienna. If you guys are familiar with the area, does anybody know where OLGC is, Our Lady of Good Counsel? If you grew up in Vienna like me, you know. So last year, and these students actually, they attend Freedom Hill, but at middle school they shift to Thoreau and ultimately Madison. So it makes, I think it does make sense that they would join the rest of their pyramid cohort. As of last year, because we obviously don't have the official numbers this year, there was only 26 students from grades K to 6th in the particular catchment area. And there's already, as of last year, there were 7 of those were pupil placed into Vienna. So we were just looking at approximately 19 kids if we were to reboundary them. There was also 7 that were in either local level 4 at Freedom Hill or split between Westbriar and Colvin Run. We don't have the official numbers, although I looked at an initial poll from the kindergarten from about a week ago. I noticed that the Freedom Hill kindergarten count was about 13 kids below the projection, which is also under their average, and Vienna was about 5 students above their average. I'm not exactly sure yet till we get the actual official enrollment where we can geocode those students, but I suspect that some of the parents have already gone ahead and moved their kids into Vienna because we're allowing pupil placement. So the proposal was to do this very gradually. In fact, the boundary change would not even occur until next fall. And what this would mean is, and I'm just guessing, if there's another 5 students that have gone into kindergarten, we're still looking at somewhere between 17 and 19 students. That's a guess. So any of the students, and if we're looking at this year, for next year, so we would be looking at the current 4th and 5th grade would stay at Freedom Hill for next year. And then any of the students who are this year's second or younger, because they're going to advance, would move to Vienna, or if they were an AAP, they would shift to Louis Archer. If they're already at Westbriar in the AAP center, they could stay there. The only change for them would be we would not offer transportation. And that's the extent of the proposal. Yeah.
If I could this is not in the attachments in the agenda item, so I've asked, thank you, Melanie, for putting it up here. This actually is from the website, and it gives a description. The bullets give a description of what actually will happen to the students in both, in the catchment area, right? So, and on what dates. So thank you for bringing that up, just so we know, because I think the actual agenda item doesn't go into this kind of detail. So this is helpful. So yes, Dr. Garza.
And Ms. Hines, I'm sorry if you said this early on. We were all kind of huddling, and I may have missed something important. I know that not necessarily were you expecting an in-depth presentation on this today. I think this is more of an awareness and opportunity for you all to ask questions. But just to point out to the board, there have been numerous meetings with the 2 board members from these 2, Ms. Hines and Ms. Reed, affected by this decision. There also have been 2 very extensive, very involved community meetings where 4 different options were laid out to gather feedback. We have the 2 regional assistant superintendents here today, along with one of the executive principals, Fabio Zulaga and Douglas Tyson, and Jay Pearson. I wanted to say Jay Matthews. Why? I don't know why. He wasn't involved. Jay Pierce was involved. Anyway, so I wanted you all to have the backstory, that there's been a lot of work behind the scenes on this issue. But just I think more the process is what some of you may have had questions about.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. We kind of jumped into this. When I first got on the board, the folks in the catchment area are my constituents, right? So when I first got on the board, they started asking me for meetings because they felt like their children should be in Vienna Elementary School rather than going to Freedom Hill, because they live in the town of Vienna and they go to Madison High School. And so for the last few years, Patty and I have been working on trying to make this happen. There's been liberal pupil placement for a couple of years for kids in this area. So the idea here is to use what we call the boundary light process to go ahead and reboundary this neighborhood. So I think that's basic. The questions or comments, Ms. Strauss?
Also knowing that Freedom Hill has been overcrowded, and they've been looking for more ways to handle their student population. So how well does this address their concerns for overcrowding at Freedom Hill?
Well, I think they're still going to be a little bit overcrowded, but this
How many trailers do they have right now?
I think they have 7.
7. Okay, I thought 6.
I think that question is a very good one. And maybe we should have said the purpose of this change initially. It was really to clean up a feeder pattern where we have very small numbers. Okay. It was actually what I think the policy was designed from the very beginning. It isn't designed necessarily to relieve overcrowding at either one of the schools. The numbers aren't significant enough to do that. And we should have said that up front, Ms. Strauss. That's a very good question. Okay. So it's really just to clean up the feeder pattern for this very small number of students to kind of stay with their group.
So my other question then, I'm assuming that the Freedom Hill community is okay with this. I know their hope is to get rid of some of those trailers. So this will not result in any to go from 7 to 6 trailers, or
I doubt it.
I don't think so. Of course, we'll have a better idea once I have official enrollment. But if they, maybe if they're, if we see that their kindergarten is not, if their birth decay is not as high, maybe they could flatten out. Or I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
Right. This will help a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Press?
Thank you. Being from this pyramid, I can attest personally to the fact that I've known people who've fallen victim to this issue, and it's just weird. I mean, when you look at this continuity that pyramid has, I mean, it's a very tight knit community within that pyramid, and to have students bouncing between the two, two distinct areas becomes weird, and in some cases can be disruptive to students' academic and social lives because they lack that continuity. I noticed in the agenda item it detailed it mentioned interior modifications at Vienna for the change that would result from us adopting this, from the board adopting this. Vienna just came out of an extended renovation. I mean, it's a whole new school from when I went there. I was there once upon a time. What kind of modifications will we be looking at the school?
Actually, it was very simple. There was one room that was a former computer lab that probably wasn't there when you were a student, but that room was converted back to a standard classroom.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin.
So for me, it's very much contingent upon hearing from my two colleagues that represent these communities to just let me know based on what you heard, and it is listed here in the board docs that the community is pleased with this option, so there's really no controversy by the recommendation coming forward. Because, I mean, honestly, I know our board time is very precious, so if you two are green lighting it and the objective report back is that the community feels this is, the best decision possible, then it gives me a lot of comfort and can certainly support what staff is recommending and that you guys have blessed it.
Ms. Reed?
Thank you. Yes, I'll echo what Ms. Hines had said. We've worked on this issue with staff now for a few years and with the community. And so, and Kathleen back there, want to give a shout out to you also. This is an emotional issue. Even though it's a small number of students, it's change, and change is hard for our families. So Ms. McLaughlin asked the question, are the communities and the board members happy with it? I would characterize this as a good compromise. Not ideal, but it does meet the goals, I think, of keeping that pyramid together. It also minimizes the impact on the families, which was something that was of concern to me and the Freedom Hill folks. So we spent a lot of time negotiating back and forth about how we could reduce that burden. And so you'll see some of the grandfathering clauses in there. The one situation I will point out that's still not ideal is the fact that I had one individual who just qualified for the AAP program, and so they'd be going off to Westbriar for 1 year and then have to turn around and go to Louise Archer the next year. And I know as a parent, I feel for that whenever there's a child that has to move and then move again. So what this family did was decide to keep their student in the level 4 program for a year. So, I mean, that's the part. I mean, is it perfect? No, but it's probably as good as we can get. And again, it's such a small number of people we're talking about. And I also, just to make sure I understand, we are doing pupil placement now. So it was an option, I assume, that was offered if the person wanted to go ahead and move now. They could have also done that. So all things considered, I think this is a very good solution. I will say the other piece of it, years ago, the community reminds me that at that point, the Cluster 2 superintendent indicated there would be a larger boundary study to look at the whole Tysons area. And they haven't forgotten that, and neither have I. And we know that we have a lot of work to do in capital improvement, but we also know that that area is expanding as we speak. And so I just wanted to make sure that's still on board members' radar, and I'll probably be bringing it up in the context of the CIP this next time around, that that's an area that we need to look at. So this was really kind of a minor surgery, I guess you might call it, just take a scalpel and do a little tiny surgery of what we needed to do to impact a small number of people in a great way. And then down the road, we certainly have more work to do. But for board members, I think Ms. Hines and I both feel that this is the best solution that we could come up with.
Sure, Ms. Hines.
Sorry, just quickly. Ditto all of that. I want to thank staff. It's the first time we've done Boundary Light. We kind of, took our time getting here, and I'm just very grateful to staff for all the flexibility that we've been able to build into this for families. I think that's what's making it palatable, So, yeah, I know that my constituents who, are on board for this. So.
Mrs. Schultz.
One, I'm very glad to hear about the collaboration that went on because that's very important, especially when there's conflicting views. So that's terrific. Two, I was going to specifically ask about that individual student because putting the power into the hands of the parents to have a choice on something like that is very important. So if the parents want to advance to Louise Archer a year early, I think that's good. If they want to stay in level 4, that's good. So that they're not horned into a decision being foisted upon them, whereas there's a palette of options, and somewhere amongst that palette there would be a tenable choice for them, so that they're not just cattle herded down one chute. So as long as they have that choice, then that's good. So, and if you feel that what this is going to lay out, and allow them to exercise, their voice, then I'm great with that.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, this is going to be new business on September 24th and scheduled for board action on October 8th. And with that, we are finished. Thank you so much. I think we'll take a 2-minute break. 2-minute break before we go on to the next item.